Over the past decade, Adam Cole has proven time and time again that he might just be one of the most well-rounded pro wrestlers of his entire generation. His natural charisma, his remarkable in-ring style, and his championship victories across multiple companies have led many to compare the rising star to Shawn Michaels. Don't believe me? Just ask many of his peers as well as some veterans of the business like Triple H and even Shawn himself who have said the same thing. He's a wrestler that doesn't just represent the best of his generation, but his generation is built off the back of his defining talents, with wrestlers all over the world continuing to mimic his style. He's essentially become the perfect blend of pro wrestling and sports entertainment, able to have both hour-long matches that leave fans excited to see more, as well as the acting chops to make people lean forward and pick up every subtle face expression on his face. He's able to steal the show as the biggest star of a brand while also being able to launch careers off of his back like Kyle O'Reilly, Bobby Fish, Johnny Gargano, and, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyways, my name is Grease from Wrestleology, and today let us take a look at the rise of and how Adam Cole baby shocked the system. But first, a bit of context. From 2008 to 2017, Cole slowly rose through independent wrestling as he became a bigger and bigger star each week. He was a member of Bullet Club, he put on some of the best matches in Ring of Honor history, and he's won championships all across the world in Ring of Honor, CZW, and more. He put on outstanding bouts against the likes of Kyle O'Reilly, Kevin Steen, Jay Briscoe, and many more as fans continue to cheer the clearly obnoxious heel that he was. Of course, he also grew in popularity with his catchphrase, Adam Cole baby, taking the world by storm, and even to this day it's difficult to say the name Adam Cole without mentioning a baby somewhere after, but I'll try my best to get through it. So, with his name literally being shouted across the world, WWE became quite familiar with his work, so they officially signed him to WWE before debuting him in a pretty big way. After Drew McIntyre won the NXT title at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 3, Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly, two men who notably have a long history with Cole on the indies, appeared at ringside. With Drew distracted by this, a figure would enter the ring behind him before launching an attack. This man, as many fans in the building already kinda knew, was Adam Cole, and the trio of Cole, Fish, and O'Reilly would soon become known as the Undisputed Era in NXT. But before they could truly start dominating NXT, the group first had to deal with the rest of NXT's incredible tag division at the time. You see, Fish and O'Reilly had already begun a feud with both Sanity and the Authors of Pain following their own tag title match in Brooklyn. But now that they had Adam Cole on their side, the Undisputed Era was able to take on any threat coming their way. And they looked to prove as such at the first TakeOver War Games event following weeks of attacks from all three teams. Immediately upon arrival, the Undisputed Era were already placed in a massive match, as this event would feature the first War Games match in WWE history between Sanity, the Undisputed Era, and a team consisting of the Authors of Pain and Roderick Strong. There, the Undisputed Era got the job done following a chaotic matchup. But now that the Undisputed Era has proven to be a dominant faction within the confines of War Games, Cole would look to get some singles success on behalf of the team. And so he would begin a feud with Aleister Black after Black beat him in a match that could have potentially led to Cole getting a shot at the NXT title. And because of this, Cole with the rest of Undisputed Era would cost Black his own shot at being the #1 contender. This, along with weeks of back and forth, led to a match between Black and Cole at TakeOver Philadelphia. And in this Extreme Rules environment, the two would put on a brutal match featuring some of the most destructive spots in NXT by that point. There, Black was able to secure a victory over Cole, with both men leaving the match with their respective fans. But despite this brutal match, and despite Cole having a completely broken body in the aftermath, Cole still managed to make an impact the following night, where he would show up on the main roster within the Royal Rumble match, and there he would be eliminated by a returning Rey Mysterio, with the wider WWE universe now becoming a little bit familiar with Cole. But despite this brief cameo on the main roster, Cole would return to NXT looking to find himself some singles success following a major loss to Black in Philly. Luckily for him then, General Manager William Regal would soon introduce another championship to the Black and Gold brand, the beautiful NXT North American Championship. And to kick off the lineage of this new prestigious championship, Regal set up a 6-man ladder match to determine the inaugural champion. At NXT TakeOver New Orleans, EC3, Killian Dane, Lars Sullivan, Velveteen Dream, Ricochet, and of course Adam Cole put their bodies on the line in order to win the title, and all 6 competitors would put on a wild and chaotic match before Cole was able to climb the ladder ladder and become the first ever North American champion. However, that wouldn't be the last time the fans saw him that night, because over the prior months on NXT leading up to New Orleans, the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic tournament would begin. The team strong enough to win the tournament would not only receive the prestigious trophy, but also a shot at the tag team titles currently held by the Undisputed Era at TakeOver. The finals of that tournament, held on NXT, featured the Authors of Pain taking on Pete Dunne and Roderick Strong. However, before a conclusive winner could be named, the Undisputed Era ran out to attack both teams, so William Regal decided that the finals of the tournament would take place at TakeOver, with the Authors of Pain, Undisputed Era, and Pete Dunne and Roderick Strong all battling for not only the trophy, but also the tag titles. However, unfortunately for the Undisputed Era, Bobby Fish suffered a real-life injury before the show, which left Adam Cole no other choice but to pull a double duty that night. But despite Cole being banged up from the ladder match before, the Undisputed Era still won the match after Roderick Strong shocked the system by turning his back on Pete Dunne. And from there, Strong was able to pull Kyle on top of an unconscious Dunne in order for them to retain the titles. And following the match, Strong revealed that he had officially joined the group as he stood alongside the rest of Undisputed Era. But with the faction now at full power, Cole would look to continue the group's dominance at TakeOver Brooklyn 4. There, he took on a man he shared the ring with at TakeOver New Orleans as he went toe-to-toe with the impressive Ricochet. And there, Ricochet's high-flying offense matched with Cole's elite-level ring performance left fans in awe as the two put on one of the best matches in both men's NXT careers. And in the end, Ricochet was able to outmaneuver Adam Cole to actually win the NXT North American Championship. Over the next few months, Cole would continue his feud with Ricochet over the title, and throughout this war between the two, more and more members of the NXT roster would join into the fight as the Undisputed Era continued to dominate the brand. Cole and Ricochet's feud would also see the two men compete in a triple threat alongside Pete Dunne for the North American title on an episode of NXT, and while Cole didn't leave that night the winner, the feud between himself and Ricochet, as well as the feud between Pete Dunne and the Undisputed Era, would boil over. And after the Undisputed Era cost the War Raiders a chance at challenging them for the titles, William Regal would bring back the War Game stipulation for the upcoming TakeOver event to settle these feuds once and for all. There, the Undisputed Era took on a team of Ricochet, Pete Dunne, and the War Raiders, and this was yet another explosive affair as bodies were left broken throughout the ring. The match even featured yet another show-stealing spot by Ricochet, who performed a double moonsault off the top of the cage on everyone standing below, and this massive move by Ricochet would actually help his team get the victory over the Undisputed Era inside of War Games. But despite this huge loss, Cole would continue to prove his worth in NXT as his star power continued to grow over the next few months, and Cole's top position in the brand would unknowingly lead to a shocking run of single success. You see, in the midst of the Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa saga, which by the way I would love to make a video on, let me know if you want to see that in the comments down below, Gargano would set to challenge Ciampa for his NXT title at TakeOver New York. Unfortunately though, Ciampa would suffer an ill-timed injury which would force him to vacate the title. So, a 2 out of 3 falls match was made for New York to crown a new champion. It would be Johnny Gargano versus the man who would win a fatal 5-way match on the March 20th, 2019 episode of NXT. That man, as you can probably guess, was Adam Cole, and at TakeOver, Gargano would finally capture the NXT title after one of the craziest main events in NXT history. Of course, with Adam Cole so desperate to become a world champion for the black and gold brand, he would push Gargano into accepting a rematch. After all, in Cole's mind, he should have already been champion due to him getting the first fall in their 2 out of 3 falls match. So, at TakeOver 25, the two would put on another incredible match with Adam Cole finally winning the NXT title after hitting 2 Panama Sunrises and 2 last shots on Gargano. Finally, Adam Cole was on top of the NXT mountain. But with both men now getting a taste of gold, Gargano was convinced that he should be granted a rematch for the championship. Their feud would continue to escalate as they fought on NXT time and time again before Regal would make an announcement. To finally put an end to this rivalry, at TakeOver Toronto, another 2 out of 3 falls match took place with both Cole and Gargano respectively choosing the stipulations for each fall. In a sense, this would be reminiscent of a 3 stages of hell match. For the first fall, it would be a normal singles match per Cole's wishes. After all, in his mind, he already beat Gargano twice, so why not do it again? Gargano, on the other hand, chose that the second fall would be a street fight. This was because he wanted the opportunity to use weapons just in case the Undisputed Era decided to show up during the match. And if the match went into fall 3, William Regal took it upon himself to bring in a barbed wire steel cage match filled to the brim with weaponry. For the first fall, Gargano was disqualified after striking Cole with a steel chair, but with a weapon in hand, Gargano was able to attack Cole with a chair as soon as the bell rang, and this led Gargano forcing Cole to submit to win the second fall. And with both men hurt and exhausted by this point, Gargano and Cole would face sudden death in the dangerous steel cage structure. Both men within the confines of the cage brought the match to an even more violent level, and in the end the match would conclude with Cole and Gargano falling off the top of the structure through a table below, Cole landing on top of Gargano, and that would secure him the victory. But with Cole's rivalry with Gargano now behind him, the Undisputed Era would continue to lead NXT as a fearsome foursome. Kyle and Fish would hold the tag team titles, while Roderick Strong would soon win the North American Championship. Yes, the Undisputed Era were the main focus of the show around this time, but Cole would soon come face to face with his next rival, returning Tommaso Ciampa. Ciampa, after never officially losing the title, would kick off a feud with Cole in his quest to bring back Goldie. But before we get into that, WWE would actually bring back their yearly tradition of putting all feuds on hold for the sake of brand warfare between Raw and SmackDown. But this time, Survivor Series would actually add NXT to the show after years of success for the brand. There, NXT stars like Shayna Baszler, Rhea Ripley, Keith Lee, and more would look to showcase what NXT is all about. The war between NXT and the main roster would build over a few weeks prior to the event, with Adam Cole notably being featured pretty highly. Perhaps the biggest moment for Cole around this time came from when he would take on Daniel Bryan on an episode of SmackDown. There, he would defeat the former WWE champion. However, before Survivor Series could take place, NXT would host yet another TakeOver War Games event the night prior. The Undisputed Era once again entered the cage, taking on Tommaso Ciampa, Keith Lee, Dominic Dijakovic, I always butcher his name, sorry, and a mystery opponent, later revealed to be Kevin Owens. The Undisputed Era would lose on this night after Ciampa performed an air raid crash off the top of the cage through two tables on Cole, but while Cole may have been recovering from that massive spot, he still had Survivor Series to look forward to. And even though he wouldn't be involved in any interbrand matches, he would still be forced to defend his title against Pete Dunne after Dunne won a #1 contenders match during the War Games event. There, despite Cole walking in a broken man, he would still leave that night with the championship. However, following Survivor Series, NXT UK felt like a forgotten brand for many in the WWE universe. So while Cole's feud with Ciampa would further linger in the background, the Undisputed Era would start a feud with Imperium in the build-up to the NXT and NXT UK co-branded pay-per-view Worlds Collide. There, the two biggest factions of their respective brands would battle in the main event, with Imperium getting the job done despite Alexander Wolf getting injured during the match. And if you want to hear more about Imperium and more importantly its leader, then I highly recommend you check out my recent video that I did on the story of Gunther. But with their match at Worlds Collide now over, the Undisputed Era soon returned back to the States as TakeOver Portland loomed on in the very near future. And to finally end this feud between them, Cole was scheduled to defend his title against Tommaso Ciampa at the event. And both men went through absolute hell during this fight, as is tradition for Adam Cole matches by this point. Towards the end of the bout, behind the referee's back, Cole hit a low blow on Tommaso before Ciampa would return with one of his own and a fairy tale ending. However, despite him getting the visual pin, the referee was still down and unable to count to 3, but with Ciampa just fingertips away from the title, a major twist in his rivalry with Johnny Gargano would take place as Gargano hit Tommaso with the NXT title to turn heel in a shocking way. And because of this, Cole was able to get the victory over Tommaso, with fans questioning Johnny's actions. However, while Gargano would continue his feud with Ciampa following this massive moment in their saga, Adam Cole would continue holding the title before finally becoming the longest reigning NXT champion in history, and he would continue to hold the title as the entire world would come to a halt. You see, TakeOver Portland was the last TakeOver event before the start of the pandemic, and this meant that NXT, along with the rest of the pro wrestling industry, was forced into lockdown with fans no longer allowed in the building. During this time, Cole would begin a feud with Velveteen Dream, as feuds against Keith Lee and Dexter Lumis grew in the background. But before he could deal with Lee and Dexter, he would first have to deal with Dream, as he defended the championship multiple times against him. This culminated at TakeOver in Your House in a backlot brawl match, and there they would battle in the parking lot of Full Sail University, with a wrestling ring set up surrounded by a plethora of vehicles. And with a no DQ stipulation added to the fight, Cole was able to get the victory over Dream following a low blow and a Panama Sunrise onto a stack of chairs. Soon afterwards, NXT would hold a special 2-week event titled the Great American Bash, and this event, notably going head-to-head with AEW's 2-week Fyter Fest shows, would feature a whole host of big matches, and in NXT you don't get a whole lot bigger than Keith Lee. By this point, Keith had risen up the card as a powerful and eye-catching presence, with him winning the North American title at TakeOver Portland. So, to close out the Great American Bash extravaganza, both Keith Lee and Adam Cole would compete in a winner-takes-all match as both titles were on the line. There, despite Cole's best efforts, Keith would be the man leaving that night as the next definitive top star in NXT, and this would also be the conclusion of Cole's record-breaking reign at 403 days as NXT champion. Following this loss, Cole would begin a slow face turn alongside the rest of the Undisputed Era, and this turn would come as he began a rivalry with Pat McAfee. The former NFL star had begun building the feud on his CBS radio program before inviting Cole on, and there he accused Cole of hiding behind the Undisputed Era during the length of his run, before mocking the former NXT champion for other unrelated issues. This resulted in Cole walking out on the interview, cursing out McAfee in the process, and this, as well as a punt kick by McAfee on an episode of NXT, led to the two having a match at TakeOver 30. And there, McAfee would actually put on a fairly impressive performance against Cole, with his athleticism being put on full display during the bout. However, in the end, Cole's lifelong experience in pro wrestling would lead him to victory. But McAfee refused to let go of this rivalry. Over the next coming months, McAfee would form a team in the hopes of destroying the Undisputed Era once and for all. Alongside other rivals of the Undisputed Era in Pete Dunne, Danny Burch, and Onnie Lorcan, McAfee would wage war against the Undisputed Era at TakeOver War Games. In the end though, it would be O'Reilly who got the victory for his team after performing a diving knee drop onto a steel chair that had been placed on Onnie Lorcan's face. This moment, along with his skyrocketing popularity around this time, would push Kyle O'Reilly to the top of the card for the first time as a singles competitor, and after winning a #1 contenders match on NXT, O'Reilly would shockingly get his chance at the NXT title as he challenged Finn Balor for TakeOver 31. Yes, around this time, fans started to speculate what Cole's true feelings were about not being on the card, with Cole continuously showing support for his friend. In the end though, O'Reilly put on perhaps his greatest singles match in NXT before losing to Balor in the main event, and following the match, O'Reilly shook hands with Balor after the brutal match, with Kyle now being cemented as a top singles star for the promotion. But despite this handshake, Adam Cole would still be a major talking point coming out of TakeOver. As the show was about to go off the air, Ridge Holland would suddenly appear behind the barricade as he held the lifeless body of Adam Cole. He then dropped a broken Cole at ringside, with the rest of Undisputed Era checking in on their once great leader. Unfortunately for Holland, he would soon suffer an injury on NXT before the feud between himself and Cole would really get started. But as O'Reilly would continue to increase in popularity around this time, and with Holland now a non-factor, Cole and Strong would be left with not too much to do in the promotion, so they decided to carve a new path for themselves as a tag team in NXT. After all, Fish and O'Reilly were the clear tag duo of the Undisputed Era, so Strong and Cole wanted to prove that they have what it takes as well to compete as a team. So heading into 2021, the two would enter the Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic. Unfortunately for them though, they were soon eliminated by Tommaso Ciampa and Timothy Thatcher, and this loss would also cost them a chance to appear on TakeOver Vengeance Day, marking this TakeOver as the first one to not include a match featuring the Undisputed Era since their formation. However, despite them not having a scheduled match for the show, the Undisputed Era would still show up to save Finn Balor from an attack by Burch, Lorcan, and Dunne after his main event title defense. And as Strong, Balor, O'Reilly, and Cole all stood in the ring to close out the show, Cole would shockingly hit Balor with a super kick. Fans saw this and at that moment believed that he was only doing this to target Finn's NXT title. However, the segment got even more interesting as he followed it up with a super kick to O'Reilly. Cole left the ring as Roderick Strong stood there in shock. And following weeks of attacks by Cole, he would finally explain his actions on the February 24th episode of NXT. There, he would stand alone in the ring as he apologized to O'Reilly before Strong would interrupt him out of concern for his friends. However, with two of his biggest enemies enemies in NXT standing in the same ring, Finn Balor would actually rush down to attack. And after Cole was able to fight off Balor, he and Strong would embrace in the middle of the ring. That is before Cole cemented his status as a heel in the company by low-blowing Roderick Strong. He stood alone as he began his journey in NXT without the Undisputed Era, and he would soon get a shot at Finn and his NXT championship a few weeks later. There, O'Reilly would cost Cole the victory before viciously attacking him after the match, and this led to one of the most anticipated matches in NXT at the time, with Kyle and Cole set for war in the main event of TakeOver Stand and Deliver. But knowing that hatred that these two men have for one another, the upper management in NXT chose not to officially take part in this fight, thus making it an unsanctioned match. And both men throughout the 40-minute war put each other through hell as the wild brawl concluded with O'Reilly actually getting the job done. This loss combined with the brutality of the match would sideline Cole for the next few months. Once he returned though, he looked to make a massive impact by attacking O'Reilly, Dunn, and Gargano, who were all competing in a number one contenders match on NXT. Later that night, Cole would actually confront the then NXT champion Karrion Kross before calling the champion overrated in one of the most compelling promos in NXT that year. And soon Cole would get his own shot at the title as he competed alongside Kross, O'Reilly, Gargano, and Dunn in a fatal 5-way at TakeOver in Your House. However, there Kross was able to retain the title. So with Cole failing to capture the championship, he would turn his attention back towards Kyle O'Reilly. After all, it was O'Reilly who put Cole out of action following their match at Stand and Deliver. So the two would brawl time and time again before William Regal finally stepped in to book a rematch between the two at the Great American Bash. There, Cole would get the victory. However, with both men now securing a victory over each other, it was only natural for O'Reilly and Cole to compete one more time at TakeOver 36. However, like with his match against Johnny Gargano, Cole would find himself in another stipulation that would remind one of a 3 Stages of Hell match, marked as the Undisputed Finale. O'Reilly would pick the first fall to be a standard singles match in the hopes that he would be able to make up for his loss to Cole at the Great American Bash. Cole, on the other hand, chose a street fight, and this would be a nice mirroring of his match with Gargano, as it would be Gargano who chose the street fight stipulation for their 2 out of 3 falls matchup a few years prior. And finally, for the final fall, the match would be contested in a steel cage. And in a match that has been building since Cole's very debut, the war was on. For the first fall, O'Reilly would counter a Panama Sunrise in order to roll up his opponent for the count of 3. Cole, on the other hand, would secure the victory in the street fight after tossing Kyle onto 2 upright chairs, setting him up for the last shot and the victory. And then we went into a steel cage match where O'Reilly would counter a super kick into a heel hook submission, forcing Adam Cole to tap out. Yes, this hardcore war was the perfect ending to the Undisputed Era, as Cole was helped to the back by officials following the bout, and it would also act as a conclusion for Adam Cole in NXT, as his contract would soon expire with the company. After making his name as a flag bearer for NXT, Adam Cole used this massive spotlight as a way to showcase what many had already knew, that Adam Cole is one of the best wrestlers in the world. Some could say that his skills were elite. At All Elite Wrestling's All Out event in 2021, Cole would shock the world by making his debut for the company following the main event, and there he would unite alongside former Bullet Club stablemates and Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks to join the Elite as yet another top heel for the promotion. This, alongside with Bryan Danielson's debut just a few minutes later, made the ending of All Out, in my opinion, the greatest ending to a AEW pay-per-view of all time, and possibly one of the best endings to a wrestling event in history. Anyway, for Cole, the decision to leave WWE for AEW was fairly easy. After all, in AEW, he would be able to stream on Twitch while also traveling the road with his real-life girlfriend, Britt Baker. From there, Cole, alongside the Young Bucks, would begin a feud with the trio of Christian Cage, Luchasaurus, and Jungle Boy. After weeks of back-and-forth action between both teams, a Falls Count Anywhere match was made for Full Gear, and this match would mark Cole's first pay-per-view bout in AEW, even though he would suffer a loss alongside the Bucks after Jungle Boy hit a concerto at the top of the ramp on Matt Jackson. Prior to that match though, AEW would announce the signing of another former Undisputed Era member, Bobby Fish. And this would be interesting for many fans, as Fish was notably injured during the breakdown of the stable in NXT, so Fish was easily positioned as an ally for Cole in AEW. But with Fish and Adam competing alongside each other, Cole would begin his first singles feud in the company against Orange Cassidy, and on a late December episode of AEW Dynamite, the two would compete in a one-on-one match. During the match, Bobby Fish would distract the referee before Kyle O'Reilly would also make a shocking debut for the company. He would assist Cole in defeating Cassidy that night before embracing the former leader of the Undisputed Era. Kyle would also reform Red Dragon alongside Fish, with the original trio of the Undisputed Era now officially in the company. However, this left Cole stuck in the middle between his past and his present, with a feud between the Young Bucks and Red Dragon soon emerging. After all, before WWE, Cole was a member of the Bullet Club alongside the Young Bucks, so he was kind of stuck in between his former family in the Bullet Club and his former family in WWE with the Undisputed Era. But while he was dealing with that inner turmoil, Cole was still feuding with Cassidy, and after Cole was able to defeat Cassidy time and time again in tag action, the two men would finally look to conclude their feud during the Beach Break special episode of Dynamite. There, the two would compete in a lights out match, with Cassidy securing the victory after both men went flying off the top of the Dynamite set. However, despite this loss, Cole's top spot in AEW was left unaffected with a lights out stipulation, making it so his win-loss record wouldn't change, and Cole felt as though he was worthy of a shot at the AEW World title by this point. So Cole would target Hangman Adam Page both verbally and physically, as O'Reilly and Fish backed him up in his quest to become the champion. This led to a huge match between Cole and Page at AEW Revolution. I was actually live at this event, and I'm not gonna lie, this was a really good match, and the thing that made it 10 times better was it was Adam Page versus Adam Cole, so all the chants were like, "Let's go Adam." I don't know, it was really funny. The whole crowd was hilarious. It was honestly a really good time. But despite the interference from Red Dragon, Cole was still unable to get the job done after Page hit Cole with the Boom, the new name for the last shot, and a buckshot lariat to retain. But Cole would continue targeting the title, even challenging him on Rampage a month later in a Texas death match, where he would once again lose to Page, this time due to a devastating deadeye through a table with barbed wire wrapped around Cole's head that left Cole unable to stand back up for the count of 10. But despite this loss, Cole still had big things coming his way in AEW. Not only would he be competing in the first ever men's Owen Hart Foundation Cup tournament, but he was also selected to make a special announcement on behalf of both AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling. In a segment that rocked the wrestling world to its core, Cole announced that the two companies would put on their first co-branded event titled Forbidden Door. This was before New Japan star and Bullet Club member Jay White made his way out to confirm the magnitude of this event. But before we can get to Forbidden Door, Cole would first look to dominate AEW by winning the Owen Hart Foundation Cup, and during the tournament, Cole would take on the likes of Tomohiro Ishii, Dax Harwood, and Jeff Hardy before ultimately advancing to the tournament finals at Double or Nothing. There, he would meet a familiar face from his days in NXT, as Samoa Joe would also look to win the tournament finals. Unfortunately for him, Cole used the numbers game to his advantage, as Bobby Fish distracted Joe long enough for Cole to take advantage and steal the victory. And by the end of the night, he and his girlfriend Britt Baker would stand atop the stage as the winners of both the men's and women's Owen Hart Foundation tournaments. Using this major victory, Cole looked ahead towards more world title successes. After Adam Page lost his AEW championship to CM Punk at Double or Nothing, both Page and Cole expressed their own desires in winning the IWGP Heavyweight Championship. After all, Forbidden Door was the perfect time for both Cole and Page to get their shot at the New Japan exclusive title. And after Jay White was able to defeat Kazuchika Okada at Dominion that year for the title, a match would be made pitting all four against each other at Forbidden Door. There, White would retain the title after Cole unexpectedly collapsed in the middle of the ring. During the match, Cole had suffered a severe concussion, which cut the match short and took Cole out of action for quite some time. However, despite this, he would still make sporadic appearances in AEW with the hopes that he would soon recover. And with the story between the Young Bucks and Red Dragon growing more and more heated, Cole was forced to pick a side. And Cole did so by aligning himself with Fish and O'Reilly, who joined him in an attack on the Bucks. Cole would officially leave the Elite, with many waiting for an explanation. Sadly though, this concussion turned out to be a lot more severe than Cole had realized, as he would be out for the rest of the year. Despite this major twist in the story, Cole would be sidelined and unable to compete, as both Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly were left to fend for themselves pretty much. Unfortunately, Fish would soon be released by AEW, and Kyle would sadly suffer his own injuries in Cole's absence. Yeah, the disappointment of seeing the Elite versus the Undisputed Era war was felt throughout the entire wrestling community, with many worried about Cole's health. But we fast forward to 2023. The wrestling landscape has moved on during Cole's absence, with many worried that Cole might never compete again. However, on the January 11th episode of Dynamite, we would get a shocking reveal as Adam Cole made his return to thank the fans for their support during his recovery process. That is before announcing that he would return to the ring pretty soon. And this promo would also act as Cole's turn towards the light, as the support of the fans turned him into a face for the first time in his AEW career. It was a heartwarming promo, as Cole, despite being a heel for the majority of his career, had won the respect and the love of the fans, with many people excited to see him return to the ring. And it was soon announced that he would compete on the March 29th episode of Dynamite, and there he would defeat Daniel Garcia after Garcia went face to face with him the week prior. This also sparked a feud between Cole and the Jericho Appreciation Society, a faction featuring Garcia at the time. Following his return victory of Garcia, Cole transitioned into a feud with Chris Jericho, as Jericho showed no respect for the former NXT champion. Jericho attacked Cole, handcuffing him to the bottom rope before Britt Baker ran down to the ring to try and stop it. That is before Baker would also get attacked by the Outcasts, as they viciously assaulted her with a kendo stick while Cole was forced to watch, unable to help. This already personal feud would continue over the next few months as the Jericho Appreciation Society continued to attack Cole. However, while O'Reilly and Fish were gone for the time being, the last member of the Undisputed Era would make his shocking debut in AEW by saving Adam Cole. Yes, Roderick Strong had joined All Elite Wrestling, and after fighting off the Jericho Appreciation Society, Strong would embrace Cole in the middle of the ring, and this would lead to a Falls Count Anywhere match between Jericho and Cole on an episode of Dynamite, with Jericho banning Strong from the building. Of course, Cole would cleverly get around this by bringing the fight to the outside of the arena, where Strong could assist him in getting the victory, and Jericho would finally put an end to the rivalry at Double or Nothing, as the two would look to compete in an unsanctioned match. Cole, still realizing that he was outnumbered in his feud with the Jericho Appreciation Society, decided to add a special enforcer to the match, Sabu. Yeah, this is a weird choice in hindsight, as Sabu had no real connection to either Jericho or Cole prior to the bout, but either way, at Double or Nothing, the two would wage war in this hardcore stipulation before Aubrey Edwards had to declare Cole the winner after Cole mercilessly started raining down punches on Jericho with a chain wrapped around his hand. Due to the odd conclusion of this matchup, the two would compete the following episode of Dynamite, with Cole and Britt Baker defeating the team of Chris Jericho and Saraya in a mixed tag team match to end the feud. And from there, Cole would once again set his sights on the AEW World title, now being held by MJF. After an in-ring promo battle between them, MJF would agree to a match against Cole on the following episode of Dynamite, and if Cole won, MJF would grant him a future shot at the title. However, despite both men putting on a main event worthy battle, the match would ultimately end without a definitive conclusion. A 30-minute time limit expiration took place as Cole looked to have the match won, and afterwards Cole tried to convince MJF into continuing the match, which he ultimately refused. MJF would continue to not grant Cole a title match despite the draw, but another wrinkle would be added to the story between them, as it would be revealed that the two would be forced to team up over the next several weeks. In the blind eliminator tag tournament, random wrestlers were forced to team up and coexist, with the winners of the tournament getting a shot at the AEW tag team titles. However, despite both men initially hating each other, the two would actually learn to grow a genuine friendship throughout the tournament. Comedy backstage segments featuring Cole looking to show MJF what it's really like to have a friend would touch the hearts and minds of fans all over the world. In my opinion, this is my favorite AEW storyline I've ever seen, probably followed up by MJF versus CM Punk. But of course, there was an underlying tension throughout, with people questioning Cole's motivation in befriending the AEW World Champion. Roderick Strong, especially Cole's only other friend in the company, questioned both MJF and Adam during this run. After all, why would would anybody trust the two most untrustworthy wrestlers in the world? But the two prevailed and got their shot at the tag team titles on the July 29th, 2023 episode of Collision, but there Dax Harwood would actually roll up MJF to retain the titles. And following the match, MJF would blame himself for the loss as Adam Cole consoled his new friend by handing him his world title. However, in a moment that tested MJF's allegiance to Cole, Max would tease hitting him with the championship. Adam, feeling the tension in the air, would stand in the opposite corner of the ring, giving MJF a clear chance to attack. In a huge moment of character growth, however, MJF would throw down the title before embracing Cole and finally finding his first true friend in All Elite Wrestling. And MJF would continue to showcase his friendship with Cole the following week by granting him a shot at history. At All In Wembley Stadium, a show with a record 81,000 fans in attendance, the main event was set between Cole and MJF for the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. And the two would also find themselves competing both as opponents and as partners that night, because on the 0 hour pre-show, Cole and MJF challenged Aussie Open to a match for their Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championships. And in a showcase of friendship, the two former rivals would coexist to actually win those titles in the beginning of the night. However, despite this, they still had the main event to look forward to as Cole and MJF pushed their friendship to the limits. During the bout, both men would simultaneously pin each other to make the match a draw, which would upset the record-breaking attendance just as much as it would upset the two men in the ring who chose to restart the match in order to have a decisive winner. And in the end, MJF would get the job done to retain. Cole, sitting in disappointment, would be consoled by Max, all while Strong watched at ringside. And in a mirror of what happened between them on Collision a few weeks prior, Max would hand Cole the title before turning around and allowing Cole to take his anger and frustration out on Max. However, despite Strong encouraging Cole to hit MJF, he would instead throw the title down and embrace his new friend. 81,000 people watched as, in a sport filled with hatred and competition, friendship would prevail to close out AEW's biggest show in their history, and I believe the largest attended wrestling show in history. The following week at All Out, Max and Cole would successfully defend their tag titles against the Dark Order, once again proving their loyalties to one another. Ever since Cole debuted in NXT, fans saw just how special he really was. Sure, he's had people like Kyle O'Reilly, Bobby Fish, Roderick Strong, and now MJF surround him. By the way, if you want to check out a full video that I did on MJF, you can go ahead and yeah, check it out. It's on the channel. But it has always been Cole who forced himself into becoming a big star. In NXT, he cemented his legacy by putting on some of the most exciting matches in the brand's history. He even did so by holding the NXT World Championship for over 400 days, a record that has still not yet been broken. And once this incredible story with the Undisputed Era was over, Cole would soon move to AEW with the hopes of becoming a top star for yet another wrestling company. And while he's been one of the most dastardly heels in professional wrestling, his range is now being put on display as he's proving to be a great babyface as well. He has what it takes to be both a dangerous villain and a beloved good guy, all while remaining one of the most compelling wrestlers on the planet. He, like the greats before him, is a perfect blend of sports entertainment, pageantry, and that exciting independent wrestling style. And as he continues to move forward through the peak of his career, fans are going to want to keep a close eye on Adam Cole as he continues to prove to be one of the greatest wrestlers of his generation. And that, my friends, that's Undisputed. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed.